Well, welcome. If you've watched my little introductory video and kind of what we were going to be doing in our Business 210 class for the rest of the semester, you've already gotten that information. I'll kind of just maybe review for just a moment where we are. We have done chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 were separate chapters about separate things. Chapter 1 was here's management. Chapter 2 had to do with the school of, going to management school. Chapters 5, 6, and 7 were the planning chapters. Planning, strategic management, that sort of thing. Chapters 8, 9, and 10 are chapters on organizing. Chapters 11 through 15 are leading, and then one chapter on controlling. So you can see the majority of our book, as I think we mentioned while we were still together, the majority of the book really evolves around the four functions that managers perform. Now we've covered through here, chapters 1 and chapter 2 has taken care of test 1 and test 2 have taken care of these. Now I know 630 class, you haven't taken your chapter 2, I'm sorry, I keep saying chapter 2, you haven't taken your test 2 yet, but we'll be getting that to you pretty soon. So here's how it works. Chapter 10, which is on organizing, chapter 11, 12, and 13 will be test number 3. The final will be 14, 15, and 16, and then the final will have some comprehensive part where I'll go back to the previous chapters with some things that I think are most important. And we'll review those with you before we actually take the final. So what we're looking at today is chapter 10. As we start on those four chapters, 10, 11, 12, and 13, that we're going to need before we do test number 3. All right, chapter 10. I can pretty much divide chapter 10 into kind of two big segments, and I'm going to be working a lot off of my notes that you should have in Canvas. My chapter notes for each chapter. I'm going to be working off of them. Might even be using the book a little bit. So but chapter 10, about half the chapter talks about change, and about half the chapter talks about innovation. So just to kind of lead into that, you have a lot of change in your life? The answer, of course, is yes. Do businesses have a lot of change? Have they undergone a lot of change? Are they going to continue to undergo a lot of change? Well, the answer to that is yes. So our author says, okay, let's talk a little bit about change. And if you're going to be a manager or you're going to be an owner, if you're going to be in the world of business, you're going to finish your associate degree in business and technology, go on maybe even for other degrees, but at some point when you start your career in the world of business, are you going to face a good bit of change? Sure. Is that good? Yeah, I think it's exciting. I'm facing a little bit of change right here, not the way I normally do a class. But it's interesting, and the main thing is to have a great semester, a completion of a great semester. So I am all into it, doing it this way to make sure that we finish up strong. Now, innovation. We haven't exactly defined what innovation is yet, but is it helpful to be innovative? Is innovation looking ahead, thinking ahead? Being an innovative person or an innovative company, is that a good thing to be in 2020? I think the answer to that is it certainly is. So that's kind of the idea behind the chapter. So I'm going to sit up here if I don't fall off, and I'm going to kind of look at my chapter notes here for a minute. We'll just talk a little bit. I started off my chapter notes, fundamental change, what will you be called to deal with? We've already said you're going to deal with change. Now, it would be nice to know what kind of change you're going to be dealing with in the future. And we can't see the future, but one of the things that we can do is this. If we see certain things that are going on right now that we know are going to be going on in the future, then we can look at those and we can see some change out there in the future because it's already started. So the first part of this chapter, we talked about some of the super trends that shape the future of business. And I guess I'll pause right here. Obviously, with the virus that we have right now, the coronavirus, it's changing our economy greatly. Things are up and down, and we're kind of in a very turbulent situation. I think we had a very strong underlying economy coming into this virus. Our economy was good. Is our economy going to take a hit? The answer is yes. Do I think our economy is going to come back strong? I do. How long will it take? It just depends on how long it takes for us to kind of get this virus under control so we can start coming back to normal lives. Okay, so I'm looking here at some of the super trends that are shaping the future of business. So I'm just going to look at these with you. The marketplace is becoming more segmented and moving more towards niche products. Markets today can be very segmented. You can drill down into some very specific markets, not only in the United States, but worldwide. And there's a lot more where now what we call niche markets, which are markets that are a particular item or for a particular group of people. So with technology and all this, are we probably going to continue with that? Yes. More competitors are offering targeted products requiring faster speed to market. Competitors are targeting certain markets, and they're targeting them to move product to them quickly. You know, we talk about competitive advantage. Companies need a competitive advantage, and I'll tell you, there's two things that can give companies a huge competitive advantage. One of those things is speed. People want things, and they want things quickly. The second one is intelligence. Work and think and act smart. If you can act smart and you can act fast, you're going to do really, really, really well. Okay, the third one. Some traditional companies may not survive radically innovative change. We've lost some companies. Toys R Us, Blockbusters. Most of our department stores are under real pressure. If you can't stay current, if you can't stay with technology, if you can't be somewhat innovative, the chances of you staying in business are not good. So you've got to be able to do those things. China, India, and other offshore suppliers are changing the way we work. We've noticed that right now with this coronavirus we have, that some things that we need are being produced in other parts of the world, and it's harder for us to get those things. But we're a global economy, and we're going to depend on other nations because they make certain products and they do things like that. That since we are global, we're going to continue to outsource things to other nations. And the way we do things are just going to change or have changed. Knowledge, not information, is becoming a new competitive advantage. Well, I've already mentioned that. Speed and knowledge, I used intelligence, same thing. Knowledge and speed are the two things that can give you a real competitive advantage. I would just be familiar with these super trends. Nothing huge, but these are just some trends that are going on now that are going to go into the future. Okay, there's two types of change that businesses will face, and those two types of change are reactive change and proactive change. Okay, and we know what reactive change is in when you react. Something happens that causes you to make changes, and so you do that. You react to something and you make change. Proactive involves making changes ahead of time. As we said here, proactive involves making carefully thought out changes in anticipation of possible expected problems or opportunities. You do something ahead of time. Here you react with reactive change. Proactive, you get ahead of the curve, so to speak. Now, I don't want you to think that reactive change is bad and proactive change is good. I don't want you to think of it in those terms. Do you want to be proactive? Excuse me. Do you want to be proactive as a business as much as you can? Yes. Are you going to be able to be proactive to everything? The answer is no. You can't keep up with everything that's going on in your environment, in your world, if you're in business. So sometimes you're going to have to be reactive. The key is, if you're going to be reactive, have a process that you can use to respond. Yeah, being reactive doesn't mean, oh my gosh, we didn't see that coming. What in the world are we going to do? There's nothing we can do. Woe is us. It's when you, just like we have processes for so many things, have a process, have a way to set up within your company that if you have to be reactive, you can be reactive in the right manner. You can do it using the strength that you have. Okay. What brings about change? In our little handout we talked about, our author talked about the forces that bring about change, or the forces for change. We keep talking about things are always changing. Why? And he says, really, it boils down to there are some external forces for change and there are some internal forces for change. And both of these are bringing about change in our lives, bringing about changes in our companies. Now again, just looking at our handout here, what are some outside forces of change? Demographics. Demographics are the study of people. Is our population changing? Yes, it is. Just the demographics of our nation, the culture of our nation, the demographics. We're living longer. Our birth rate is going down. Single-family homes. Just a lot of things with our demographics change and are continuing to change. Technological advances. We've already talked about that. Technology is probably the biggest generator of change is technology. Social and political pressures. There are social things. I guess that more talks about our culture and our social values and this sort of thing. Political changes. A lot of times with political changes comes changes in the law, those things. And then he talks about the customer, the market, the stockholder. Are customers changing? Are the markets changing? Are stock? So there's just a lot of stuff going on externally that bring about change. Internally, you have management and you have employees, and there's things that are going on as far as management as it reacts to things, and employees. So management and employees within a company themselves bring about internally the forces for change. So we don't need to look at change as something, if I can get this done, I won't have to worry, everything's going to be the same. Well, we know that that's not true. The only thing about change that's, I guess, I don't know how to say this, is not constant, is the constant reality of change. One thing that you can always say about change is always going to be there. I mean, in our day and time, that's just the way it is. And we need to kind of accept it. We need to kind of embrace it. He talks a little bit about three types of change. Least threatening, somewhat threatening, and very threatening. Okay, now, this is kind of like from a business, and I really don't like the term threatening, because when you talk about change, and you say, look, change can be good. Change, you can embrace change. You need to be able to react to change well. You need to be able to be proactive to as much change as you can. But then when we use the term threatening, it makes it sound like change is bad. Well, it's not, but I'll use the author's terminology. Three kinds of change. Least threatening change. That's where, let's say, around Christmas time, you put on extra employees. That is a change, but you do it every year. And so it's a change, but it's not it's a least threatening change. It's a change you're used to. It's kind of like happens all the time. A somewhat threatening change. You've been open 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. You go to a 24-hour day. That's a little more. You haven't done that before, so that's somewhat threatening. Does that mean it's going to be something you can't do? No, it's just going to be very threatening. Would be if something changed that was practically new to the industry. Walmart, well, first of all, the internet was new to the industry. Marketing, social media, those things have been just total changes of how marketing is done. Walmart used to not have to worry about an Amazon taking some of their business. You know, when you have what he says practices that are new to society or new to the industry, those things can be very threatening change. But can you deal with it? The answer is yes, you have to. He threw at the very bottom of my first page of my little handout, there was a guy named Lewin, Lewin. And he said, hey, you know how to handle change? Let me give you a quick and easy way to look at handling change. Unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. What in the world? Well, here's what Lewin was saying. First of all, get people ready for change. Unfreeze the way they're doing it. Prepare people to be ready for change. Show them maybe what's not good with the way you're presently doing something. Show people what's going to be better doing it the other way. Get them ready. If you just go in and say we're changing, even people that don't mind change, you gotta give them a chance to adjust. You gotta let them know why. Okay, so unfreeze, he says. Then Lewin says, after you've unfreezed, change. You got them ready for it, make the change. Then once you've made the change, refreeze. You see that? Unfreezing, changing, refreezing. So now you've implemented the change, and now you refreeze. Now the change is the new way of something being done. Okay. How can you help with change? Something he mentions here is something called organizational development. It's a set of techniques for implementing planned change to make people and organizations more effective. So he says, in all this change process, this change stuff, there's our author gives us tools sometimes. Here's a tool you can use. Okay, OD is a tool that you can use to bring about a process to and a helpful way, a successful way to bring about change. It's a set of techniques for implementing planned change to make people and organizations more effective. The way they do OD, it's kind of like how you handle a sick patient. So if a person is sick, and I'm looking at my diagram, and you can do that as well. If a person comes in, I'm sick, I don't feel well. Well, the first thing that's done, they usually do a diagnosis. They take your temperature, they take x-rays, they take blood work, they do some type of a diagnosis. Based upon that diagnosis, they do something. They give you pills, they do this, they give you that. That's intervention. After you've done that, and you're taking those pills, then they do an evaluation. How did it work? How did it work? And then you get feedback. Then he says that's kind of how that OD works. It's kind of like treating a sick patient, but in this way, it's kind of taking care of your company. Diagnose what's going on. If what's going on needs to be changed, then diagnose it carefully. Do an intervention that you feel like will work. Evaluate that intervention and let that evaluation of that intervention feed back. If you find that intervention was great, that going to 24 hours was great, or whatever that you did, then you would continue. Okay. So that's kind of the things about change. I don't think we need to be afraid of change, but I don't think we need to let change just happen to us. Whether we can be proactive to change or whether we have to react, let's do it in the right manner. And let's make sure Lewin, organizational development, some tools that can help us. All right. Now, the flip side, innovation. He says, let's talk, now we've talked about change, and we have in our mind, when is change going to stop? Never, ever. So let's enjoy it, let's embrace it, and let's handle it correctly. He says, now let's talk about innovation. What is innovation? This would be a point in the class that I would say to you, what is innovation? And y'all wouldn't say much to me. I wouldn't get much feedback because we all know or have a pretty good idea. We all have a pretty good idea what innovation is It's just hard to put into words. You'd say innovation has to do with creativity, it has to do with new things, it has stuff like that. All right, and that's right. Okay. Let's look at our definition. The activity of creating new ideas. This idea of new. Innovation has to do with new, and we know that. The idea of creating new ideas and converting them into useful applications. Now see, this is a business definition of innovation. Creating new ideas and converting them into useful applications. Now what does that mean, converting them into useful application? It means converting them into new goods and services. Out of innovation from a business point of view should be new offerings for your customer. Not always, but most of the time. I like that. The activity of creating new ideas and converting them into useful applications, specifically new goods and services. All right, now, I got a little carried away here as I was writing on our study notes, but I said this, innovation, I said, it ain't invention. It's not inventing something. It's not creativity. But it is invention and creativity, but it's invention and creativity as it relates to the customer. Innovation does create something new. There is invention and there is creativity, but it does not become innovation until out of that comes a useful application, or out of that comes new goods and services for the customer. Does that kind of make sense? From a business point of view, that's the way you look at innovation. Innovation results in new things for your customer. Two myths about innovation. He said one of them is a eureka moment. Now what in the world does that mean? That means that you're walking along one day and you're sipping on some water, or you're doing something like that, and it hits you out of the blue. I just have the greatest new idea, the internet. Or you're just walking around and you say, I've got it, the telephone. I don't think the internet or the telephone was invented, was created, became an innovation that went to be of great application to customers in a eureka moment. What did it probably take? A lot of hard work and a lot of failure. You know, if you want people in your company to be, you gotta let them fail. Now you don't want to fail too often and too costly, but I've heard some companies talk about you celebrate failure. I mean, it's okay. You realize if they had not let, Thomas Edison fail on the light bulb, we wouldn't be having these lights here. He didn't get it right the first time. Nor very often did they get anything right the first time. So the idea here is that, it's okay to fail. Like I said, just don't fail too often, don't fail too costly. That's kind of the key, I guess, to that. But number one myth, eureka moment. The second thing is almost the exact opposite of that. Innovation systematized. What that means is this. Okay, if I do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, automatically I get innovation. That doesn't work either. There's not any 1, 2, 3, 4 step to innovation. Innovation does not jump out of the sky. He says what you need to do is it takes time and it takes effort. And through time and effort and passion and failure and experiences, out of that sometimes can come real innovation. That's what he's talking about. Okay, let's look at types of innovation. Now these are pretty easy. I'm looking at my handout. Product and process innovation. You got that? If you're talking about product innovation, that is innovation related to the product. It's ways that the product is changed. Process innovation is the way that the product is manufactured or delivered, disseminated, that sort of thing. If you change, you notice TV sets don't look like they looked 25 years ago? Product innovation. That probably don't look like they looked like 25 months ago. Then you've got process innovation. Give you one. He talks about dissemination as being a process innovation. John Deere products always used to be sold at John Deere dealerships. If you wanted a riding tractor, a riding lawnmower, and you wanted a John Deere one, you had to go to the John Deere dealership. Do you have to do that anymore? No, you can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lowe's, you can go places like that, and you can buy John Deere products. They came up with a process innovation of how they placed or distributed their products. Okay, two other types. There are core innovations and transformational innovations. Core innovations, and I'm just kind of reading off of this right now. You can figure if it's core, that means basic. If it's transformational, that's earth-shaking. Core optimizing of product services for existing companies. With core innovation, you want to do all you can with your products for your customers. Transformational innovation is some type of an innovation breakthrough. Probably transformational, maybe the cell phone. Transformational were fax machines when they first came out. Transformational would be the internet. You can't have we don't have a lot of transformational innovations because it's just hard to come up with something that's just totally new. I would, as I'm thinking here, I think I haven't even done this yet, so maybe, well, I think I started it. I would be familiar with the super trends that are shaping the future of business. I said that to you, I think, earlier. I would be familiar with reactive and proactive change. I'd be, familiar kind of with what each one of those are, and I would be familiar with some of the forces for change, those external forces and internal forces. Now I'm talking about purely being familiar with. I'd be familiar with kind of the different types of change. Least threatening, somewhat threatening, very threatening. Nothing big there, just kind of glance and just know that there are different types of changes. And I think I'd be familiar with Lewin's model because it's a really simple way to talk about how to handle change. Unfreeze, change, and refreeze. All be familiar with. I'd probably be familiar with organizational development as well. That tool. In organizational development, it's kind of like the way you would treat a sick patient. But this is where you're treating a company. You diagnose the situation, you bring about an intervention, you do an evaluation, see if there's, and then the feedback tells you how it is. Innovation, I'd certainly be familiar with what innovation is. I think I'd even be familiar with the two myths that are surrounding innovation. I'd be familiar with process innovation and product innovation. I'd be familiar with core and transformational innovation. Okay, so sorry, I was going to do that as we went along. I just kind of got all carried away and forgot to do that. I'll stop as we go through these chapters more often and do that for you. 4 steps for fostering innovation. Now, we've already said you cannot systematize innovation. You cannot say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, innovation guaranteed. But he says there are some things that you can do to foster innovation. There's some things that you can do to help bring innovation about. I think I'd probably know these. I think these are things that are really pretty important for us to know. The 4 steps for fostering innovation. Number 1, recognize the problem or opportunity. If you don't see the problem or you don't see the opportunity, you're not going to see the need to innovate. Number 2, gain allies and show them your vision. Very seldom, if ever, can innovation be accomplished alone. It's going to take a team. It's going to take others. They've got to see your vision, and you've got to gain people, your allies, to help you. Step number 3, overcome resistance. You're going to have resistance anytime because innovation is different. Innovation is change, and it's kind of big stuff. So you're going to have resistance. So one of the ways you can overcome that resistance is empower the employees. The employees that are going to be involved with this innovation, empower them to help. Empower them to be a big part of it. And number 4, do it well. Do it well. once you start moving towards that path or along that path that hopefully leads you to innovation, don't do it sloppy. Don't do it poorly. Don't do it half-heartedly. Recognize the problem or opportunity, gain allies, and show them the vision, overcome resistance, empower your employees, and execute well. Those are the things that you can do to foster innovation. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 step. It's things that can encourage it. Two other things I think in this chapter: the causes of resistance to change. Now, I can't see you. You can kind of see me. Do we have some folks that resist change? Yeah. And here's what he says. Let's do this little definition. The causes of resistance to change is an emotional behavioral response to real or imagined threats to an established workplace routine. Hey, look, even if you're okay with change, when you get set in the way you do things, it's still different when you change it. And so when you have something that changes, or you feel like something is going to change, to your established routine, there's a tendency to resist it. Okay. And so that's just that resistance to change. Now, the last thing I put down here, I'd like for you to be familiar with resistance to change. I'd also like for you to be familiar with the 10 reasons employees resist change. Now, I didn't put that on your notes, but let me share those with you. I've got my text here with me. Let's just talk through, and let's see if you are any of these 10 reasons employees resist change. Number 1, individual predisposition towards change. What does that mean? I don't like it. It means I don't like change. It's good. I don't like it. It'd be I don't like it. You just have a predisposition towards change. I don't like change. Now those folks are tough. Those folks are tough because they're automatically against before you even get started. Another reason people resist change: surprise and fear of the unknown. Okay, if surprise and fear of the unknown causes us to resist change, then if you're going to innovate change and innovation within your company, what do you need to do? Inform your folks. Let them know what it's going to be like. Let them know how it's going to help you. Let them know how it's going to be different once it's over. Climate of mistrust. If you've got a climate of mistrust in your company, you've got a lot more problems and resistance to change. There's a lot of things you better do, because with a climate of mistrust, your company is on a downward slide. Number 4, fear of failure. We don't like to fail. It makes us look bad. It hurts our ego. So what you've got to do is you've got to make sure in a business situation that you emphasize success, performance, but always remember this: hey, if we fail, we're probably going to learn some good things as well. So don't get so paralyzed that you're going to fail. You won't do anything. You won't try anything. Loss of status or job security. Wow, sometimes change brings about where you may not be doing what you used to be doing, or you may not be doing it with those that you have done it with before. Again, management can help an awful lot in trying to alleviate those kinds of situations. Peer pressure. I'm okay with it, but some of the other folks in my group aren't. That can cause a real resistance to change. Disruption of cultural traditions or group relationships. I may not be with the same people. Things may be different in the company. My company may become, let me give you an example. CenturyLink. Has the culture of CenturyLink changed over the last 20 years? The answer is yes. It used to be a nice sized regional Northeast Louisiana company. Now it's worldwide. So has the culture changed? Yes. So that may have been a little bit of a problem for some folks. Personality conflicts. One of the things you can resist change, if the person who's leading the change, you have a personality conflict. Managers have to learn how to work with their employees and work around personalities. Now, the lack of tact or poor timing. Listen, if you're going to bring about change, you already know people are concerned about change. For goodness sakes, use tact. Tact just means you want them to see the good side of it, how it's going to help them, how it's going to help the company. And the timing, look, if you're getting, and I messed up on this one time with a payroll situation, so I know what I'm talking about here. If people aren't ready for it, don't do it. It's kind of like Lewin and his unfreezing. If you hadn't got them good and unfrozen, where they're receptive to the change, don't pull the trigger. Wait till you get there. And the last one he talks about is non-reinforcing reward systems. Reward people when they're going to change. I mean, a lot of times they have to do additional training. They're going to be in new surroundings maybe. Build in a reward system. As we move from here to here, there's some rewards for doing that. Those are things that will help people as far as resisting change, and kind of the reasons they do resist change, and some things that businesses can do to keep that from being such a problem. You can't eliminate all resistance, but you can eliminate a lot of it. Good timing, tact, letting the employees know what's going on, those sort of things, empowering them. So really this chapter talks about two things that businesses deal with. Change, which is ongoing, always, and innovation, which you have to be, if you want to have a competitive edge, if you want to be able to survive long term, there's got to have some innovation within your company. And remember, I think one of the things we really talked about is you're talking about change and you're talking about innovation. Just keep in mind that probably the two things that can give you a better competitive edge than anything within a business is speed and knowledge. If you're smart and you're fast, you're going to be pretty doggone good and pretty doggone successful as a company. That pretty much takes care of our chapter 10. We're going to get back here in just a few minutes, and we're going to do chapter 11. So as I mentioned to you before, Professor Fierce, he likes to have a nice big loud audio so he can tell when I break from one chapter to another. So we have now finished chapter 10, and we are on a break. See you in chapter 11.